Low heart rate training, a brilliant way to build aerobic-based fitness, or just a boring waste of time? Let's find out. Most successful runners seem to spend a lot of their time running with their heart rate in zone 2. And after a recent injury outage, during which I wasn't able to do much cross training at all, I needed to build some base fitness more than ever. Due to the nature of my injury, it was important that I returned to running gradually before I even considered any intensity, so I decided to do a zone 2 heart rate training test. If you want to find out the results, stick around to the end of the video, and if you like what you see, hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. So how did it work? Basically, I figured out my heart rate zones and then tested my running efficiency before and after a period of running almost exclusively in that zone 2 range. So here we are at Exeter Arena. I may have gone a little overboard in terms of warmth tonight, but it is very cold. I'm gonna set a benchmark and then spend the next few weeks running in zone 2 almost exclusively. And we're gonna see what that does to my base fitness by coming back here at the end of that period and seeing how much quicker I can cover the distance. Once I was on the track, I went through a stretching routine and then did a short warm-up just to get the heart ticking over so I wasn't starting from scratch on the test. Then I set off on 10 laps of the track, totaling 4 kilometers, with my heart rate averaging 145 beats per minute, right at the top end of my zone 2 heart rate range. Well, that's the benchmark set. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't fun, and I am a mile off where I need to be. But let's see what some zone 2 running does and compare back in 3 or 4 weeks. So the plan is to do 2 30-minute runs a week, with one slightly longer 45-minute run on the weekend, a majority of which will be in zone 2 heart rate, although I may allow myself a 10-minute spell in the middle of the longer run on the weekends where the heart rate stays a little bit higher, just to keep things interesting. I read some research in the lead up to this project which suggested this wouldn't undo the benefits that I'd get from most of my running being in zone 2. So with week 1 of the experiment starting with the benchmark test, it meant that it was quite light and only featured one run on the Friday of that week. It was just under 25 minutes of running, and as you can see from the data when compared to the benchmark test, just running outside with variable conditions, variable terrain, caused a huge discrepancy in my pace. That sterile environment of the track, where lots of the variables are removed, obviously makes a huge difference, and it became clear to me even from this first run that I might not be able to gauge how the experiment was going based on the runs I did during the experiment, because there were so many other variables at play on any given run. One of the features of this Zone 2 project has been starting every run with 5 minutes in Zone 1. And while that might mean running even slower, possibly walking, what it can do is activate your aerobic system and help you be more efficient in Zone 2. So with all my running being relatively slow, how did I stay disciplined and resist the urge to speed up when easy running in Zone 2 can be so monotonous? Well, there's a couple of things you can try. If your watch has a function to do it, set a heart rate range so it will give you an alert when you go outside your desired zone. Maybe run with someone else just to keep those dull runs more entertaining. Dress a little cooler to keep your body temperature down, but do bear in mind that on colder days you might actually need to wear more than you would normally, as you won't be generating as much body heat when running at an easier effort and pace. In week 2 I stuck to the plan, and that featured 2 30-minute runs followed by a 45-minute run on the weekend. And in that second 30-minute weekday run, I peppered in a few 15-second strides on the treadmill just to see how the injury rehab was going and to see if there'd be any repercussions to running at a slightly faster pace, even for a very little amount of time, the next day. Fortunately there weren't any, and I felt good the next morning, although it did introduce the temptation to run a little bit faster, a little bit more often, and that would have lost sight with what I was trying to achieve with this project. I did allow myself a 10-minute pickup where I ran a little bit faster during that 45-minute run on the weekend though, and that felt really good. This run actually saw me get my first runner's high in months. So this is week 2. This week I'm hoping to increase the volume of running. So towards the end of the week I'll make 45 minutes the standard and then look to increase to an hour on that weekend run. So with my body feeling good and my injury recovery going well, that's what I did, and 45-minute runs during the week became the norm. Week 3 not only marked an increase in the volume of running, but it also saw the reintroduction of a proper strength and conditioning program into my routine. From this point forward, runner-specific strengthening sessions became a part of my program again. So it's the beginning of week 4 of this little project. It's Boxing Day. Some company with me today from Emmy. I'm trying to beat the Boxing Day bloat. I'm having a really nice steady run. This has actually been quite good for me because it's keeping me disciplined, keeping me honest with my pace and my heart rate.
Because your wife is so slow.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
In hindsight, the Zone 2 limitations were a blessing, as I reckon I'd have been sick if I'd done any faster running after the Christmas feast the day before. Week 4 fell in that period between Christmas and New Year and was the final week of the project. And although I couldn't see any trends in the data that enabled me to see how well this experiment was or wasn't going, I could tell that I was able to control my heart rate more effectively and there were fewer walking breaks. This felt good, as although the numbers I was looking at didn't necessarily back it up, it made me feel like I was heading in the right direction. So today is 4 weeks since I set the benchmark. I'm back here at Exeter Arena. Let's go find out if the last 4 weeks have made any difference to my base fitness at all. So after a gentle warm-up, during which some very talented kids thundered round the track in the opposite direction, it was time to see if the work I'd put in during this project had had the desired effect. So I set off on 10 laps of the track in an attempt to cover the distance faster than I did 4 weeks ago, all while maintaining the same heart rate, while a group of kids literally ran circles around me. But was the project a success? Let's have a look at the numbers and find out. So what's the final verdict? Does Zone 2 heart rate training work? So if we compare the basic data from my benchmark at the start of the project with that of the test I did at the end, you can see that I managed to cover the 10 laps of the track at the end of this experiment over a minute faster than I did at the beginning, even with a heart rate of 144 BPM on average, which was 1 BPM slower than on the benchmark test. Now 1 beat per minute is not a drastic improvement obviously, but the speed at which I covered the distance equated to 16 seconds per kilometre faster. Again, this doesn't seem like a seismic shift, but it's pretty huge considering that I'd only been doing this project for a month, and in that time I only ran 3 times a week, totaling 10 hours of running. So that means that just 10 hours of disciplined running saw a 4.5% improvement on my efficiency. So imagine the improvements I'll be able to make to my aerobic fitness as my injury recovery continues and my running volume increases. But while not super scientific, I think the readings I was getting from my watch are good enough for the purposes of this experiment, and the general data trends and the comparison between the start test and the end test do indicate that there's been an improvement in my aerobic fitness. So what do you think? Has the experiment been a success? Maybe there's something I missed. Could I have done it better? Let me know in the comments. Or maybe you've done something similar to build aerobic fitness yourself. Perhaps you're thinking about taking on your own low heart rate training test. If so, I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching.